Good afternoon to our viewers in Germany and good morning to our viewers in the United States. Hello, I'm Steve Sokol and I'm the president of the American Council on Germany, and I would like to welcome you to today's Kaffeepause. This is our regular check-in with a Berlin-based journalist to talk about the stories shaping the headlines. And today, we're joined by Stephan Detjen. He is chief correspondent for Deutschlandradio, and many of you might have heard his voice on the radio before, but he also heads the station's capital city studio in Berlin. Herzlich willkommen, Stefan.
Hello, Stephen. It's good to be with you again, and hello to everybody in the audience. I'm astonished that there are so many people being interested in Germany in these days.
Well, I think today we're in for a treat because we are going to take a deep dive into German domestic politics, and we're doing that because there is no shortage of stories to talk about. And I can hardly think of anybody better than you, because you always have your finger on the pulse of what's going on in Berlin. This, of course, is a session week when the Bundestag is in session. Um, Maybe the place to start is what's the political mood like in Berlin on this Monday at the beginning of this session week?
Yeah, good question, Stephen. I just come back from a meeting with a delegation of chief of staffs of members of the House of Representatives in Washington who were visiting Germany. Um, and I started the conversation with kind of zooming in into the German perspective. And I think it's important to note or to remember, if you go into the details, which we of course will do, that we are having a number of major dynamics which are shaping German politics these days. I would still first mention the dynamics on the in the international arena. Germany is struggling with its role in the international arena, and the discussions about the war in Ukraine and more about the war in the Middle East, in Israel, Gaza, and Lebanon are shaping the discussions and the political discourse. Then, secondly, and that's what we are seeing what we will see when we go into the details, we are in a major German discussion about the self-identification of Germany as an immigration country, as Einwanderungsland. This is still an ongoing, vivid process which is underlying all the discussions we will be talking about. Thirdly, and that's coming, that will shape the discussions in the future more than it's today, but it starts to be very visible. These are the discussions about the economic situation in Germany. We are in a phase. We are seeing the political parties getting ready for a parliamentary election whenever it will take place. It's scheduled for September 28th, but we may see it further. Nobody knows so far. But we are seeing the parties getting ready to have a campaign that will focus on the economic situation, on economic and social issues. That's what we are seeing today, what we saw on the weekend when the Social Democratic Party came out with the first policy paper on economic policy. And so this situation, we are in a phase of elections. We had the remarkable elections on state level in East Germany. We are still having negotiations on coalitions which have been, or forms of corporations in Thuringia and Saxonia with the CDU and the post-communist Sarah Wagenknecht Bündnis, something which have been unthinkable a year ago or so, which
Mhm.
might become reality within the next weeks or a month in Germany. So it's an unstable political situation. There's a lot going on in German politics. And this, I would say, is the mood. It's a phase of uncertainty, particularly because still in these days we don't know when we will have the next federal elections. We might have decisions in the next weeks or a month. I would say there is one date we should keep in mind. This is November 16th. This is the so-called Bereinigungssitzung, the last session of the uh, of the uh, of the financial committee of the Haushaltsausschuss of the German federal parliament, when they will have to agree on the federal budget. If the coalition passes this day, actually it's a night of negotiations in the parliamentary committee. If we wake up on November 17th and we will see the coalition having passed the government in the parliamentary commission, we can remember September 28th as the date of the federal elections, but it might be different. We might see the coalition falling apart in the days in the coming weeks, and this is what is shaping all the political buzz in Berlin these days.
And I mean, I think it's fair to say that this government, this traffic light coalition, um, has there's been a lot of talk about whether or not this coalition would hold the full 4 terms. This is not something that's new. It's something that's come up before. The coalition has held together so far, but some aspects of the uncertainty and sort of the instability of the political situation that you didn't mention just now have been some of the leadership changes at the heads of the 2 major coalition partners. Just a few weeks ago, Ricarda Lang and Omid Noripur, the co-chairs of the Green Party, announced that they were going to step down. Just this weekend, Kevin Kunert, the general secretary of the Social Democrats, stepped down, saying it was for personal health reasons. These kinds of developments can't do anything to shore up the confidence that voters have in the government or even in the parties that are represented there. Can you talk a little bit about those 2 transitions and what we might read into those?
Yeah, I would say that the level of confidence or non-confidence in the government is of course is evident and it's very unusual. I can't remember any moment in our history when we had a coalition like this one that is openly speaking about their inner dysfunctionality since at least since the election for the European Parliament. We heard, for example, Kevin Kühnert openly openly saying that nobody should expect this government from working any longer without these internal debates, which have led to the level of mistrust they are confronted with now. So they openly said that this is not more than a very functional form of collaboration. No speaking anymore about what was called eine Zukunftskoalition in the beginning, eine Fortschrittskoalition. Nothing like that. It's like Omid Noripur, the departing head of the Greens, said, it's a Übergangsregierung,
a transitory
government. That's their self-understanding, and nobody should expect the voters having a lot of confidence into that form of a government. The changes that we have seen in the leadership of these 2 parties, the Greens and the Social Democrats, are caused by different reasons. In the case of the Green parties, it's the logical consequence of a kind of traumatic situations the Greens are in since 1.5 years, since the very controversial and heavy debates we had about the so-called Heizungsgesetz, the energy laws passed by the government and pushed forward by the Green Ministry of Economy and Energy, Robert Habeck, the Spitzenkandidat, the candidate for the Chancellor's office of the Green Party now. Since that, the Greens have been in a situation they hadn't known before. They were everybody's darling. At least that's how they felt. And within a few months, they have become a a highly controversial party, being accused of being responsible for the state of the government, being an object of open hatred in the public discourse. They weren't used to that, so they felt the need to for a reset of their leadership, and that's what they are doing now. And that means they will have a leadership that will gather around or behind Robert Habeck as their top candidate, including processes like parts of for example, of the left youth organizations leaving the party, and Robert Habeck and his entourage openly applauding these young leftists leaving their party. This
Mm-hmm.
is for the Greens. For the Social Democrats, from everything I know, and I spoke to people closely involved in this process, it was a very personal decision of Kevin Kühnert, of the Secretary General of the Social Democrats, to leave for health reasons. It's pretty obvious that it was mental health reasons. It was something like a burnout or whatever it was that he felt, and he was definitely is recognized across party lines as one of the political talents on the stage in Germany. But he didn't only leave his position as the Secretary General, of the General Manager of the party, but also he announced that he won't run for a seat in the Parliament anymore. So he really seems to have reasons to pause and to recover. So these are these two processes.
Mm-hmm. And I guess since you mentioned the party conference that just took place over the weekend and ended today, um, there is already a new Secretary General in place for the Social Democrats. His name is Matthias Miersch. What can you tell us about him?
Well, he's a known, quite respected member of the parliament from the left wing of the Social Democratic Party. He was in environmental politics and energy politics before. He was known to be a moderate critic of the chancellor before, but it's a very understandable choice of the party to pick somebody like him. Kevin Kühnert, of course, was also a representative of the left wing of the Social Democratic Party. They needed to pick somebody. Matthias Miersch definitely has a lot of parliamentary experience. He, I believe, will be he will be an experienced manager of the party, and it's pretty obvious. Also, that's what I heard from my conversations with top representatives of the Social Democratic Party, that there will be clear roles in the upcoming election campaigns, which means that Lars Klingbeil, the co-chair of the party, he will be the top strategist. He will be the top guy in the party. They will integrate his co-chair Saskia Esken in the leadership of the party, but it's evident that Lars Klingbeil is the strong leader in the party, and Matthias Miersch will be in a classic role of the Generalsekretär, of being the one who will be responsible for the aggressive rhetorics, particularly against Friedrich Merz. That's what we have seen within the last days and hours. They don't speak of the Christian Democratic Party, CDU, anymore. It seems like they don't know the CDU anymore, as if they don't remember that they have governed the country in a coalition with the CDU 12 years anymore. They are not speaking about the CDU. They are only speaking about the Merz CDU, about the Friedrich Merz CDU. And that's clearly the campaign we will seeing in Germany in the coming months until the election. They will depict Friedrich Merz as the adversary, as the guy from the 90s, as the neoliberal guy with old concepts, the man who can't reach out to younger electorate, who can't reach out to women, to female voters, the man with his private airplanes, and the guy who is the guy of big finance, having been a top manager, a manager and advisor of Blackstone um, in the years when he had left politics.
But I mean, I think that part of it obviously is merits, but part of it is probably also some of the polling numbers, because I saw that the Social Democrats are 15 points behind the Christian Democrats right now, and so they must be absolutely terrified of falling even further behind the other traditional Volkspartei or catch-all party. Not that one can say that either the Christian Democrats or the Social Democrats are close to the strength that they had during their heyday.
Yeah, of course. You have two narratives in the Social Democratic Party. One is the narrative um, that you still hear when you talk to Scholz's closest advisors, and his closest advisor, of course, is the chief of staff in the chancellor's office, Wolfgang Schmidt. He is the guy who is on Olaf Scholz's side, his closest ally since many, many years. He was in Hamburg. He was the state secretary in the Ministry of Finance, using this office to shape the the last election campaign for Olaf Scholz, and making, first of all, Scholz the candidate of the Social Democratic Party, and then making him a chancellor. Also from a position, and you would hear that from them all the time, that they started in a position where Scholz had lost the race for the
Right.
chair of the Social Democratic Party. And since he had lost, these people, Wolfgang Schmidt, all the time said, but he will be the candidate for the chancellery, and he was right.
Hmm.
And they started, of course, from a also from a position far behind the Christian Democratic Party, and they said, you will see, we will catch up. And um, for a long time they would tell you that they will repeat this kind of miracle this year again. Now um, most of their party doesn't trust them anymore, that they will repeat it the same way. So what you hear from them now is that they would say, of course, we know it's not 2021 anymore. We can't repeat the same thing anymore. And that's why you hear, in a remarkably open way, leading Social Democrats putting a lot of pressure on Olaf Scholz himself, saying, well, we know, we feel that the Chancellor himself has to über sich selbst hinauswachsen, that he needs to
Is to
um,
jump over his own shadow in a sense,
jump
right?
over his own shadow. He has seine Körperhaltung to verändern. He has to change himself. We want to see him acting, communicating in a different way. Still, they are saying that very openly. Yet I do believe I can't see a scenario, or I find it hard to imagine a scenario where they would push Olaf Scholz aside. I think they will run with Olaf Scholz, and they will, and their narrative will be that they will win this time because it's Scholz against Friedrich Merz. In the end, in the decisive last weeks and days of the election campaign, be it in March, be it in September, it will be also in Germany a highly personalized race. And they trust in the fact that people will see Olaf Scholz and Friedrich Merz. And that
Hmm.
people will wonder, and I think there is a point in it, that the people will wonder, well, did we like the government? No, but there is war all over the place. There's war in the Middle East. There's war in Ukraine. Are we involved in the war? Did the war reach us? No, it didn't. We are seeing the economy in crisis. It's pretty hard, but did we lose our jobs? It's a good chance that enough people, even in September last year, even if we may have seen Volkswagen closing factories, that most people will say, no, we didn't lose our jobs. Will we take the risk of voting for somebody like Friedrich Merz, whom we know, but Is he the guy we trust in? I think they are right to believe that there will be many people in the end relying on Olaf Scholz.
Hmm. I mean, you talked, of course, earlier about some of the factors that are at play at the moment. You mentioned migration and, of course, the state of the economy. I'd like to come back to migration in a little bit, but stick with the economy now because obviously this is affecting all three of the governing parties. Over the weekend, the Vice Chancellor, Robert Habeck, who's also the economics minister, um, shared, a set of graphs with journalists about the state of the economy and needed to say that this is the second straight year of recession that the country is in, and talked about how one might try to get out of that. It was interesting that following this meeting of Social Democratic Party leaders, they were focusing on their re-election campaign through the economic lens by talking about, coming back to reforming the minimum wage, looking at tax laws, trying to lower taxes for normal people, but raise taxes on the 1%. The economy is obviously front and center right now. Um, how does that play out for the Free Democrats and for Christian Lindner, who of course has always been trying to pull the debt brake? Um, but then also on the other side, what are the Christian Democrats doing to sort of counter some of these narratives and put forward their own economic solutions?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, you're right in saying that the economy is front end now, which is new. Just it's a few weeks ago that everybody would have said it's migration, it's security that is front end. Everybody was talking about migration, about Solingen, about
Right, the
attacks,
attacks that had taken place.
about the
Um,
attacks, about
yeah,
various security related issues. But but now it's the economy. And Friedrich Merz, honestly, even though the CDU, his party, was polarizing in the debates about migration and security a lot in the last weeks and months, Friedrich Merz, and I think it's his honest position, says that he wishes the electoral campaign to be a campaign on the economy. He believes this is the original strength. It's his personal competence. It's the traditional competence of the Christian Democratic Party. Um, it's a risky calculation, I would say, because we have not seen a guy that is to the degree Friedrich Merz is depicted as the guy of big finance and the big companies and so on running for the chancellor's office. We have always seen people running and winning federal elections, um, being being quite centrist, more centrist at least, as the traditional image of Friedrich Merz. So it will be very interesting to see how the CDU is shaping him. They know that they have to somehow take him out of the very personal polarization he is in right now. So we will see him a lot kind of addressing women, addressing younger
mhm.
voters, and so on, which also, of course, costs him will cost him um, uh, in his a part of his traditional image,
Voters.
which
Yeah,
also attracts a lot of voters, of traditional
yeah.
voters for the Christian Democratic Party. So much about Merz and the CDU. The FDP, the liberals, of course, are in an extremely difficult situation, being rated definitely below the 5% threshold. Um, if we look at the elections, they are out of the parliament with the next federal elections. And this, of course, triggers the speculations that Christian Lindner um, might or is tempted to drop out to go out of the coalition in the next weeks.
Mhm.
I think it's extremely hard for the liberals to get out of the situation they are in now without some drastic measures. So I would think there is a realistic chance that Christian Lindner, whom we have seen once in 2017 leaving the negotiations for a so-called Jamaica coalition with the Christian Democrats and the Greens, with his famous quote, "It's better not to govern than to govern badly."
Hmm.
And he again and again referred to this quote and reminded people that he said, "I am ready to leave coalition negotiations. I will be ready to leave a government." He doesn't say it directly, but that's his message. "I'm ready to leave when I feel that we govern badly." And it will be hard to convince his electorate in the end that they did not govern badly.
Hmm.
So it's up to Christian Lindner on a very personal level whether this coalition survives this fall, or whether he takes the risk of going in an election campaign next fall, when it will be extremely hard for his electorate to convince
Hmm.
them that they did a good job in this government.
In some of the reporting that I was reading today, I guess it was today, uh, there were positions that stated that not just the FDP, but also the Social Democrats and the Greens are sort of thinking about exit strategies and how to pull out of the coalition, possibly. This has all kind of happened since Matthias Miersch was announced as the new Secretary General of the party. How much do you think that this has to do with him? And how much of it is just uh, the environment for this coalition, which has been at loggerheads on and off almost since it came into power, um, has gotten to be too much. And so the coalition partners are keeping this open as an option.
Now, first of all, I don't see Matthias Mirsch having any significant influence on the debates now. He is new in his
Mhm.
position. As I said, Klingbeil is the strategic leader of the Social Democrats. So it's not Mirsch. It's not a strategic change in the Social Democratic Party. They will have a different tonality. Um, we will hear the Secretary General in the public discourse as an aggressive voice, but it's not a strategic decision. The Greens won't be the ones leaving this coalition. I can't see that. I don't have any indication that the Greens would leave. They need the time. They need the time to recover. They need the time to build up their party behind Robert Habeck as the new strong man in the party. So there is no interest for the Greens in having early elections. They want the time. So it's all up on Christian Lindner, and I don't see the Social Democrats also leaving, blowing up the coalition. I can't see
Right,
that.
right. Where is Olaf Scholz in all of this?
Hmm. Good question. I mean, Olaf Scholz, it's interesting. My personal theory is that the state of this coalition really depends a lot on Olaf Scholz. He is uh, many people say he's a bad communicator. I think he, or if you look back at Angela Merkel in as a political leader in coalitions on the international stage, in the G7, in the G20, in the European Council, there's so much about her personality. People saying from all political directions, saying that it was so important to have somebody who is so trustworthy, whom could people trust.
Right,
She was really able to build up personal relations of trust. And Olaf Scholz, that's not what Olaf Scholz is doing. Olaf Scholz, I mean, as a journalist, I can tell you uh, the, these many situations, many of them on open stage, how Olaf Scholz would let us know that he thinks we journalists don't understand the world, don't understand him. We are stupid. We haven't seen what he's seeing. We haven't seen what he's obvious. He's right. I
Hmm.
mean, you can criticize us journalists. I mean, we don't see, but the way he's letting
Right.
us know that he feels he is superior, he is
Right.
the guy checking everything, is not is not only in the relation between him and the media and the public. I am convinced this is something which also shapes his relations to his coalition partners. It definitely is that something as a political journalist you can understand by talking to people. It's definitely shaping his relation to his own party and to
Right.
the Democratic caucus in the parliament. And I am convinced it's also shaping relations in the international arena in a different degree. I am convinced that, for example, Scholz was somebody who would let the Eastern Europeans feel that he thinks they are irrational, they are driven by, I don't know, irrational feelings and so on, and he is the rational guy when it comes to dealing with the Ukraine situation. And
Hmm.
I don't like that. There might be one exception where there is a different relation, and that's somehow the relation Olaf Scholz has built up to Joe Biden. I mean, we will
Hmm.
see Joe Biden in Berlin
On Friday,
on
right?
Friday. He will come if there is no, if you don't tell me there is a hurricane coming,
Hopefully
riding right.
not.
Um, that might be a different relation. There might be indeed something like a personal trust or respect um, that that Scholz was able to build up.
And that I think goes back to, you had led with three important points that are kind of driving some of the uncertainty or that Germany is working through right now. One big one was the economy. Another one was migration, but then the first one that you mentioned was Germany sort of figuring it out its role on the world stage. And this is, of course, something where it's important for Scholz because he then is the face of Germany on that world stage.
Yeah, of course. And I mean, the term Zeitenwende, of course, will remain. That is he
Yeah.
has an ability to coin expressions that remain. Zeitenwende is a term that is, I believe, globally adopted. I hear it wherever Scholz comes. People quote it in their own languages. Um, but also in the domestic politics, there are these Scholz terms, the Wumms, the Doppelwumms, the
Yeah.
bazooka, and so on. He is somebody who somehow thinks about terms, uses them, and that's a quality. Um, and the Zeitenwende, also the substance of the move he did after a long period of waiting and making people wonder, who is this guy? I remember his first visit in the White House in early February or January. It was January 22 when he was on open stage in the East Room with Joe Biden answering the questions of the press and not being able to use the word North Stream. People were, of course, at the time asking what happens to North Stream
Hmm.
if, and he would avoid a clear answer. It was amazing. And that was the moment when we saw Joe Biden standing next to him saying, if this happens, we will know what we will do. We will be able to stop it.
Right.
Of course, today being the reason for other speculations when it comes to the attack on the North Stream. But that's a different question. But
Right.
this transatlantic relation and Scholz acting in this context started from a very difficult position and then really changed the course of German politics and is quite one of the is definitely one of the remarkable directions um, by Olaf Scholz.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I think that's definitely remaining.
Yeah. I have a couple questions from the audience. Since we've been talking about economic issues so much, one of the key economic advisors is Jörg Cookies, and
Mhm.
someone would like to know what role Jörg Cookies plays vis-a-vis Scholz, and even goes on to say that Cookies seems to be a voice of reason and seems to be pretty grounded.
He definitely is, and I Cookies is somebody who is working with Scholz since a long time. He was a state secretary in the Ministry of Finance. He is somebody who came from the world of finance. He was with, I think, with Goldman Sachs. He was
Yep.
he was working with Goldman Sachs before he went into politics. So it's an interesting career, and uh, and they are working closely and with a relation of trust, I believe. Mm, and Cookies definitely is. I mean, he was as a I think as a young guy, he joined the Social Democratic Party as a young guy. Nevertheless, went into the world of finance, which is
Mhm.
not the usual career path for a social democrat. So he's an interesting figure, and definitely he is influential. He is managing the government in the G7 and the G20
Yeah.
conferences. So um, he is quite influential person.
Yeah. And another audience member is curious whether you think that there are any parallels between the political tone in Austria and in Germany at the moment.
Mm, it's a very good question, and I think all, the situation in Austria is very special. It's a special story. The rise of the populist movement of the FPÖ in Austria. Of course, it's also part of the rise of the populist movements in Europe. When I was with this congressional with this delegation of chief of staffs earlier today, we spoke about the rise of. They asked how comes there is a neo-Nazi party being so strong in Germany now, um, and I reminded them that this is not only that you can't simply frame the AfD as a party that is the rebirth of the Nazi party. It's you have
Right.
to see it in the context. I mean, of course, it's related to German history, but you have to see it in the context of the rise of populist right-wing populist movements all over Europe. And but of course, I mean, when you see these discourses, these public language spoken in Austria since years, since the years of Jörg Haider, when you hear that as a German, it's shocking
Hmm.
to see uh, how directly this is indeed related to a language we know in Germany as the language of a Nazi party. This is
Hmm.
it's shocking in Austria, and of course it's because they don't have this moral barrier that was built up and held up in Germany for generations now.
Hmm. I mean, I know that this is a whole other topic that we could spend at least an hour talking about, but I don't want to let you go before we've at least dug into the issue of migration a little bit, because as you said before, just a few weeks ago, it seemed as if migration was the topic that was the center of people's attention. That doesn't seem to be quite the case at the moment, but it's still a very important topic when it comes to mobilizing people and mobilizing parties. So can you maybe talk a little bit about the role that migration is playing in shaping the political landscape at the moment?
Well, definitely there was um, the fact that we were talking so much about relation had to do with first of all, with the elections in East Germany, with the rise of the AfD, which maybe, um, which maybe didn't take into account that we were speaking in these elections about a small minority of Germans voting.
Right.
The number of people voting I mean, in this case, we had three East German states, Thuringia, Saxonia, Brandenburg, voting spring and in early September. But if you look at all East German states combined, excluding Berlin, but the East German states have less inhabitants than Bavaria.
Right.
So the level to which these developments were shaping the political discourse in all over Germany was a bit out of sync, I
Mm-hmm.
believe. The phenomenon of the divide, of the East-West divide in Germany remains, of course, a phenomenon which is we have to talk about, um, but I think it's wise to be careful not to take East Germany for the rest of Germany.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't only these elections; it was also these two attacks, one in Mannheim, one in Solingen, where migrants, refugees, attacked or killed people, and also that in combination with these electoral campaigns and the tabloid press and so on, shaped the debate. And in the result, we had a debate on migration like we have it when populist movements are putting a pressure on the system and other parties, in this case, particularly the CDU, believe that this is that they have to a certain degree, adopt the
Mm-hmm.
formulas of the populist movements. I mean, this was evident. And if you spoke to Friedrich Merz or the Secretary General of the CDU, they would openly say, yes, in this case, we have to adopt the demands of these populist movements. We have to do, and um, their um, their idea, of course, was that it's enough to do it once. For
Right.
once we have to do something very highly symbolic,
Right.
and that was pushbacks at the German borders, pushing back refugees at the German borders. We have to do that once. Friedrich Merz would say, I know it's when it comes to European law, it's problematic, but we have
Right.
to do it now. And that then will allow us to have a federal election campaign where we can focus on economy. That's the idea behind it. We will see whether it works out.
Mm-hmm. So as we come to a close, and as we look ahead, you've already told us that we should follow the budget negotiations closely. I mean, the budget has been presented to the Bundestag, and we're going to see some wrangling in the Bundestag over the next few weeks as they discuss the budget. But November 16th, of course, is the date when last revisions will be able to be made. What other things would you recommend that people keep their eye on in the weeks ahead as we try to understand how German politics is shifting?
Well, there are, of course, three issues on the agenda, three um, legislative processes which we will have to watch closely. One is the legislation on migration and security. It's a package of changes in various laws. Uh, it's about um, it's about uh, uh, um, it's about allowing police to use digital data, face recognition in a broader way. This is highly disputed. It's about more or less minor, but symbolic changes in Waffenrecht when it comes
Mhm.
to
Gun laws
knives. Not well. It's not
or
about
weapon
guns in
laws,
this
but
case.
yeah.
It's weapon laws, and it's about knives. This is more or less symbolic. The hard discussions, if anybody wants to have hard discussions, it will be about data protection
Hmm.
um, in criminal persecution. Um, the second legislative uh, procedure is um, the Rentenpaket,
The retirement.
the retirement, what they call the retirement package.
Yeah.
It's about with two key elements. It's the Social Democratic Party element in it is securing a level of 48% for retirements, a guarantee level of 48%, and a liberal element is it in it is adding a capital market-based element in the retirement funds. We have signals from this retirement laws were passed in the cabinet with the consent of Christian Lindner, but we hear voices from the liberals demanding discussions in the parliament. We will see. It might be one of the things, the arguments liberals use when they want to blow up the coalition. Then it will be about the retirement package. And the third element, of course, is the budget. And the budget is everything. Everything's in there. If you want to blow up a government, it's via the budget. So there is enough explosives in the room to blow things up. So these three elements you have to watch closely. It's details. We are listening closely to the language we hear in interviews. That's varying. You have to know to whom you're listening. It might be also interpreted as power plays within the parties. It might have to do something with new folks we are seeing in the leadership. That's where Hirsch or the new leaders of the Green Party might play a role. But these three laws will be decisive for the coalition.
Well, obviously, there is a lot to follow when it comes to German politics. And I want to thank you so much, Stephan, for walking us through that. It's always a delight to speak with you. And I hope we have the opportunity to do that again.
Yeah, thank you so much, Stephen, and greetings to everybody listening. I can't see who's in, but particularly to those whom I might know, many greetings from Berlin. Hope to see you soon again.